Let's take the original version of the commandments anyway, in their due order, see where they lead us. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that the business takes 16 verses, not 10. And the first injunction has very little to do with morality, if anything, and a lot to do with the amour propre of the lawgiver himself. And nor is it self-evident that the various declensions of this throat-clearing of the first commandment are the same. No graven images are to be made of any living thing on heaven or earth or in the water. Is that one commandment? Possibly. No prostrations are to be made before any such image, which is not quite the same, is it, as the prohibition upon their manufacture. And the punishment here, which isn't cited for any other of the transgressions, is specified, is that the fourth generation of the offender's children will be penalized for his sins. Some might say that the idea of punishing successor generations is a repulsive one, or at least not necessarily a moral one. It's more a frightening one than a moral injunction. And therefore it's not a surprise to find stipulated by the Lord that he's a jealous God, as the King James Version has it, the authorized version, and will not allow other deities to be put on equal footing with him. Again, a little depends here on which translation one's employing, but it's permissible to speculate that Yahweh knows that there are other gods, or at least suspects that there may be other gods, and resents them, or anyone turning their affections in that direction. In other words, it's odd that this should be considered the foundational document of monotheism, since there appears to be someone who's uneasily, not to say uncomfortably, aware of the polytheistic possibilities of reality. After all, it's not so surprising again. I address myself here to people who like to rest their case on miracles. In Egypt itself, earlier, the pharaonic priests had agreed to a duel with Aaron about miracles, which both of them could produce. So that the ability to produce a miracle testifies to the validity of no particular faith. Their conjurer could produce great wonders also. So what we appear to be looking at is an angry competition for monopoly affection among an oligopoly of potential deities, somewhat more like the cruelty and caprice of Olympus. And the story is told by the already terrified fans of the apparent winner. So if you like, you can call all of that one commandment, but it seems to me to be multiple ones and multiple injunctions. You're still, with the jealousy and with the vanity and the caprice, you still have a separate commandment on not taking the Lord's name in vain. And once again, it's all backed up with the specific threat that offences will not be soon forgiven. In fact, let me quickly, if I can find it quickly, not waste the time of that very nice Xerox operator, actually read it to you as it occurs in the King James Version. Both of these multiple commandments. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. So you might think that someone who keeps the commandments won't have their children persecuted unto the next generation, so that if the next generation of children didn't keep the commandments, they'd still be protected by the fact that their parents had kept the commandments. But no. Thou shalt not take the name of thy Lord, the Lord thy God, in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Right. You see where I'm going with that. All of this suggesting a great insecurity and unease. Then comes the requirement, again tediously repeated, for the observance of the Sabbath day. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son, I may as well finish this, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. Uncontroversial in itself, a day off, but again, having nothing to do in this case with ethics or morality, but only with the fear of the Lord. It is only obedience to that fear that is moral. And it's interesting as marking, not for the first time, or the last, those to whom it applies. Male bosses and employers are the ones addressed. and their manservants and maidservants, nor their cattle are permitted to work on Sunday, or the Shabbat. A confusion between people and chattel, that is going to recur again very soon. Indeed, if anything can show you that there's a good argument that the commandments are man-made and not God-ordained, it would be the general Exodus emphasis on agriculture and sheep and lamb and goat products in general. I had a debate on the BBC recently with Canon Slee, one of the deputies of the Archbishop of Canterbury, in which I said that one of the things I disliked about Christianity when I was quite small was having to think of myself as a member of a flock. In other words, as a sheep or lamb. And also having to reflect that shepherds don't look after sheep just because they like them, though some shepherds like them much too much. But in order that they can first fleece them and then kill them. And Slee, to his credit, he took me up on it rather decently. He said, you know, it was a problem for us with the church in New Guinea, where I served for a considerable time, because, as with a huge number of areas of the world, there are no sheep in New Guinea. Exodus is limited in that way too. Even the animals it describes aren't available everywhere. So he said, we had to work out what the locals in New Guinea valued as the Israelites would have valued sheep. He said, it got to the point where one Easter I saw my bishop get up into the pulpit and address his congregation and say in English to them, O Lord, behold these your swine. So you see how off the track you can get, off the beaten track you get with agricultural metaphors, and how confining they can be. And of course it would have to be a pig, the very one that Yahweh most eloquently condemns elsewhere. As I say, if this is God-made, it looks somewhat man-made all the same. Now, furthermore, if one day, and only one day, is holy, it can suggest that others are profane. And that's led to a good deal of fetishism of the Sabbath and of Shabbat. I remember when I used to work in Northern Ireland, trying to point out to the Reverend Ian Paisley, I worked for a Sunday show at the time. He wouldn't be interviewed by anyone whose show or newspaper came out on Sunday. So I tried to point out to him, Reverend, it's the Monday papers that are printed on the Sunday. And I could see his piggy eyes sort of narrowing. He took this in. It took him a long, long time before he'd give an interview to the Observer. But in the end, reason prevailed. So why not just say that the worker deserves one day off in 7? Why say that it's necessary only because the Lord, who effortlessly made heaven and earth in 6 days, doing what came naturally, rested on the 7th? Anyway, make a note of this stipulation, small though it may seem, because it's coming back. It's crucially varied in the Deuteronomy version. All right, moving right along. The next 5 commandments are famously brisk and terse, with the slight exception of the order to honor one's parents, because that comes not with the threat of punishment, but with an inducement this time. Obey it, and thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. So once again, one's forced to notice, these rules are not being urged for their own sake, or because they are innately and self-evidently moral. They're being urged either to avoid the punishment of 4 generations of one's children, or in order to be given land that until now had belonged to Canaanites and other lesser breeds. They come to us, in other words, not as precepts of morality, but as accompanied and bodyguarded by a mixture of threats and promises. And it's interesting to notice that parents are nowhere told that they must be good to their children. But there may be a good reason for that too, and I'm coming back to that.